Hey everybody. So it's Sunday, which means it's time to do games of the week. So this is when we look at the upcoming NHL schedule for this coming week, and I pick what I think will be the best games of this week. Before we get into that, I just want to say if you're not yet a subscriber to this channel, please hit that subscribe button. As long as you're a fan of hockey and a fan of the NHL, there are videos here for you. I do videos at least 3 or 4 days a week, sometimes every day. Just kind of depends on my schedule. But as long as you're a hockey fan, there are videos here for you to enjoy. So please hit that subscribe button and follow the channel. Um, this week, not as many great matchups this week as there were last week. Last week was a very, very good week as far as matchups go in the NHL, and we saw some great games because of it. This week, not as good, especially the beginning of the week. It starts off a little slow, but not awful. And then Saturday actually looks like it's going to be a pretty good day of NHL hockey. But let's start with today, Sunday the 25th. New Jersey versus Tampa Bay. New Jersey really only a 500 team so far this year. Not off to the best start. They need a game to really kickstart their season. This might just be it. Playing Tampa Bay, who they played in the first round of the playoffs last year. There's some rivalry now between those teams, some animosity between those teams after that playoff series. This could be the kind of game that New Jersey needs to really get their season off the ground. Tomorrow, Monday the 26th, really only one great game, and that is Boston versus Toronto. And Boston versus Toronto will be on this this game of the week video every single week that they play this year. Two extremely close teams as far as talent, as far as where they are in the standings. They met in the playoffs last year. Honestly, there's a good chance they're going to meet in the playoffs again this year. Just really, really great matchup. And that is Boston versus Toronto is a rivalry that is really coming back now as these teams play each other a lot and play very close games with each other. Let's Tuesday the 27th, Colorado versus Nashville. Again, playoff matchup from last year. All three of these games so far are playoff rematches of matchups from the first round of the playoffs last year. Again, I talk about the Central Division every week pretty much. Anytime Central Division teams face off, for the most part, not every time, but for the most part, it's usually one of the better games of the week. And Colorado and Nashville absolutely are. There is a strong rivalry growing between those teams. It started really last year, and then when they met in the playoffs, it really took off. And then there's a chance they could meet in the playoffs again this year, with Colorado being a wild card and Nashville being the division leader. So, or if Nashville gets caught and becomes number 2, Colorado could move up to 3, and you could have a Nashville-Colorado first-round series again this year. So, really, really strong matchup there, and should be a lot of fun to watch. Dallas versus Edmonton. This I put on here because Edmonton, they have got to turn things around. If they want to have any chance of making the playoffs, Edmonton has got to start winning games, which means they're going to play. They need to play hungry. They need to play with fire, with passion. They have got to start showing that they refuse to lose. Because if they keep losing games, they're going to find themselves right back where they were last year as far as the standings go. And it's going to be another wasted year of Connor McDavid and another huge disappointment for the Edmonton Oilers. So they have got to turn things around quickly. Dallas is a team that I think they're very comparable to as far as where they're going to finish in the standings. Dallas is a wild card team right now. Edmonton is trying to move up into a wild card spot. They need to play hungry. That should be a very hard-fought, fun game to watch. The next night, the 28th, Dallas versus Calgary. Again, Calgary I think is better than Edmonton, but that's a big game for Dallas. Dallas is trying to prove that they are one of the best teams in the Central Division, that they're worthy of being a playoff team after missing the playoffs last year. They have a lot of competition in the Central Division, and even though this isn't an in-division matchup, Calgary is a team that is near the top of their division in the Pacific, so Dallas needs to beat those teams that are ahead of them as far as the Western Conference goes if they're going to make the playoffs, so that's a big game for Dallas. Dallas has Edmonton and Calgary on the road back-to-back nights. That is a tough, tough schedule. We'll see what they can do, but if Dallas can somehow win both of those games, that is a very, very strong showing for the Stars. Even if they win one, if they go 1-1, that's perfectly fine for the Stars. That's a tough schedule right there. The 29th, only one game the 29th, Buffalo and Tampa Bay. That's really a really strong matchup. Right, believe it or not, there's your two best teams in the Eastern Conference right there. The entire Eastern Conference, Buffalo is 1, Tampa Bay is 2. Just Buffalo is unbelievable right now. They're on a 9-game winning streak. They are 16-6-1 or 16-6-2. I forget. I'm not sure which. I think 16-6-2 on the season. But unbelievable start for the Buffalo Sabres, and now they're going to play one of the best teams in the league in the Tampa Bay Lightning. That should just be an absolutely magnificent matchup and a really, really fun game to watch. Friday, November 30th, we have a couple of games that I'm really looking forward to. St. Louis versus Colorado. Central Division matchup. Teams that should have some animosity between them. Division matchup. But St. Louis, for God's sakes, has got to get something going. They had just played that stretch where they had Nashville, and Winnipeg. Those were their last 3 games. They lost. They went 1-2 in that stretch. They lost 1 to Nashville, 1-1 to Nashville, and then lost to Winnipeg. So really, they didn't gain much anything in the standings as far as that stretch goes. So they've got to find a way to beat Colorado and start winning some games here, or their season's going to be over. I mean, it's a little early to be calling teams' seasons over, except for maybe the LA Kings, who are done. But if we go another couple weeks here and St. Louis hasn't gained any ground as far as the standings are concerned, then their season's going to be over. You just can't make up ground like that. You're not going to pass, 5 teams to get into a playoff spot. So St. Louis the pressure is on here with the Blues. They have got to start putting some wins together, and not just winning one, losing one, winning one, losing one. They've got to put a win streak together, like a significant win streak. 5, 6, 7 games in a row. That is the only way that they're going to get back into playoff contention. Really, really big game there against a tough division rival for St. Louis on Friday. And then the Kings versus Calgary. That's a matchup that would be better if the Kings were better. If the Kings were good and these were two teams fighting for a playoff spot, that would be a much better matchup. But still, division game, and two teams that over the past few years have really not gotten along all that well. They've played some rough hockey against each other. So even though LA really stinks this year, maybe that kind of animosity will make it a good game. And Calgary, if they're going to win the division, and it looks like they're contending for the Pacific Division, they have got to make sure that they win games like this one against the Kings. They have got to beat lesser opponents if they're going to finish ahead of San Jose in the division. So, big game for Calgary to make sure that they win, and could potentially have some fireworks if she's only going to take 1 or 2 big hits, and then that game could really take off. And then finally, Saturday, December 1st, I cannot believe that the end of this week we're already to December. This season, it seems like it's absolutely flying by. The months are flying by. It's already freaking December. We're almost to 2019 already. It's unbelievable. But a lot of good games on Saturday. Really, really good matchups. New York Rangers versus Montreal. Two teams that had really, really good starts to the season, but it seemed to be starting to fade a little bit. The Rangers are starting to go backwards and aren't playing their best right now. After a stretch where they were really, really good, they were almost unstoppable for about a 9-10 game stretch, but now they've lost a couple games and they're starting to head backwards. Montreal, they started the season really well, but they're starting to, become more of a win one, lose one, win one, lose one type team. So that's a big game for both those teams, and both teams could really use the win. Tampa Bay versus Florida, in-state rivalry, division rivalry. Florida off to a really, really bad start. They need a statement win to really kick off their season and turn things around. Tampa Bay could be the perfect team to do it against. A team that's presumably better than you, your in-state rival, your division rival, a team way ahead of you in the standings. If Florida can win that game, they can use that as momentum and really, really take off this season. Philadelphia versus Pittsburgh, two struggling teams right now. Pittsburgh's been a little bit better of late. Philly seems to be going in the wrong direction, and I'll be talking about them later today. That's a huge game for both teams. Both teams need that win desperately. So that should be a really, really hard-fought, fun matchup. And obviously the rivalry between Pittsburgh and Philly is one of the best in the league. So you know that that's going to be a really heated game, a real nasty game. And there's going to be some serious nastiness and animosity between those teams, as there should be. And that should just be an absolute blast to watch. And lastly, Chicago versus Nashville, Central Division matchup. But Chicago tends to be the odd one out as far as usually I put most Central Division matchups. If it's an in-division matchup for the Central, I usually put them on here, but not usually Chicago games, because Chicago doesn't really play nasty with anyone in particular. Not the way that like Nashville and Winnipeg do, or Winnipeg and Minnesota do, or Colorado and Nashville do. Like, they just seem to, Chicago doesn't seem to play all that nasty with anyone, except for there are two teams, the St. Louis Blues, who are their natural, in-division rivals. St. Louis and Chicago goes back a long way, so that's a good rivalry. And then Nashville is the other team that Chicago can get down and dirty with the Predators. So that's why I put that on here and not other Chicago games, because I think Nashville is one of Chicago's strongest rivals right now. So with that, those are the best games of the week, or at least what I think will be the best games of the week. Definitely try, if you get the chance to watch any of these, I definitely think that they will be worth watching, and I know I'm going to be watching whatever of these that I can. So that's the games of the week for this week. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media, check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support Off the Wall Hockey, the link to our Patreon and our merch store are both down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.